Stop those who threaten our wildlife, plants, and report poaching, littering, burning, and report poaching, littering, burning, and other environmental crimes. Call 864-TOCA or install the free TOCA app today. This public service announcement is brought to you by the Department of Agriculture, UOG Sea Grant, and Choice Broadcasting.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning. Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, tailgaters, I suppose you thought that, hey, what's going on? Bob's playing hooky again?
Again?
Again. You know, first it's Monday and Thursday, and here he is again. No, it was a technical difficulty. Jose said that something happened back in the mechanical room. He didn't know exactly what it was, but it smelled like fish, right, Jose?
Some scoundrels were barbecuing in the back room.
Yeah.
We got them, and they didn't even share.
So, anyhow, I let Jose use my beer can opener, and he went back there and fixed it somehow. I don't know how he did it, but I don't ask questions. I just do the show. Okay, so let's go straight to Jimmy and Cutney. We got a couple of pretty good editorials today, and then an op-ed that I cannot resist talking about. Okay, the Daily News editorial. Our view, submerged land lease legislation is a tax on the island's telecom industry. Because of the changes made by Speaker Therese Tetlahi's Land Committee, Bill 36 no longer is simply for a submerged land lease to GTA, which was its original purpose. The bill has evolved into a much more complex issue, whether the island's telecommunications industry should be further taxed, and by how much. If that's a policy lawmakers want to pursue, it merits more research and public input. The March public hearing for Bill 36 focused on a proposed lease for a narrow strip of submerged land in Tamuning based on fair market land value. GTA asked for a lease so it can land more subsea telecommunications cables to replace aging and outdated infrastructure. The hearing didn't address the issue of charging hefty annual government fees for landing subsea cables, which basically amounts to a new tax on the industry. Read my lips. No new taxes, George H.W. Bush said during his only term as president. The revised bill proposes to charge GTA $100,000 landing fee for each new subsea cable, plus at least $100,000 a year for each landed cable. The money would be deposited to the Chamorro Land Trust Infrastructure Fund since we don't have the necessary rockets to take it to a black hole in outer space. However, the results will be about the same. Those additional charges should be the starting point for leases for all future cable landings, according to the Speaker. While additional government revenue could benefit the community and the land trust, there's an overall economic benefit to having an island that is well connected to the rest of the world by subsea cables. Those cables help Guam. No matter how deeply GTA digs into its pockets for the government of Guam, it won't solve the problem of GovGuam inaction with respect to the land trust. This would be one situation, though, where it's the Chamorro Land Trust, where I would say if there is inaction on the part of the commission, let's just leave it alone because they don't do anything right. The bill would tax GTA in order to replenish a land trust infrastructure fund, which was depleted by former Governor Eddie Calvo in 2017 and which has never been reimbursed. Calvo transferred $321,263 from the fund, which was almost the fund's entire balance. The money was there to take because the land trust never spent it. It's pointless to give the land trust more infrastructure funding if it doesn't have a plan to spend it. The issue obviously has become more complex than a simple lease. The legislation needs more public input and a reconsideration of its purpose by legislators. Senators may also want to consider whether the current legislation would mean that telecoms may find landing cables on Saipan to be more economically viable. So there's a lot to chew on here. I'm going to start out with with the easiest target of all, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. To give money to that group is absolutely a mistake. They haven't done anything right since their creation. They seem to be impervious to criticism. There seems to be no willingness to try to straighten out their house, which is very disorderly. You know, they caught Jack Haddock, their administrative director, red-handed in a forgery that he was going to try to pass off on them to get them to approve a lease that was illegal. And he knew it was illegal. And what did they do? They just horsed around with it, and finally they had to ask the governor, well, what do you think we should do here with this guy? And finally they got rid of him. They haven't replaced him, so they don't have an administrator. They don't understand the Sunshine Law. They haven't violated the open government law so far as we know, but of course those are the kind of violations you don't know about because they could be done in secret.
The year's not over.
Yeah. So, to give them this kind of money is just a bad, bad mistake. We call it the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, but it really isn't a trust. If it really were a trust, the legislature would be completely out of it. A trust is a fictive person. It's a legal person like a corporation. And trusts that operate within the boundaries of the instructions of the settler are free to do whatever the trust allows. So because it's not really a trust, the legislature could take those submerged lands away from the land trust. I think that would be a tremendously good idea. Give it to Gita, who has some sense of business and regularity. And, once Gita is able to collect the necessary funds and supervise the Chamorro Land Trust and how to deal with it, then maybe you could use that money for surveying. But I just don't trust the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to do anything right. So that's That's the low-hanging fruit in this particular issue. Don't give anything to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Then second, I think we've got like 13 cables that pass through here right now. And, our greatest disadvantage is also our greatest advantage. Our greatest disadvantage is, as realtors would say, location, location, location. We're far away from everything. We're like 3,800 miles from Honolulu. Our nearest big cities are Honolulu, as you were Manila and Tokyo, and they're 1,500 miles away. 1,500 miles, that's farther than Chicago to Miami. That's a long haul. But the advantage that we have is that we are right here on the edge of Asia, and obviously we're a really good place for cables. You remember back in the day when the Australian cable station first went up? And it's in Upper Tumum, right very close to the road that goes from Marine Corps Drive down to San Vitores Boulevard as you're heading south. And they put up a really nice building, and they used to fly the Australian flag there every day. It was quite a sight to see. They built houses for their on-site personnel to live in, pretty nice houses, I guess. But about 10 years ago, they tore all the houses down for some reason. And I don't know what they use the building for now, but I'm digressing here a little bit. We're obviously in an ideal location for telecommunications. So this is one of those junctures where we want to decide, do we want to be pro-business? Do we want to encourage more telecommunications, more cables companies to land their cables here and put junctions in place here to increase our communications with the rest of the world? Or if we see an orange on the ground, do we want to pick it up and squeeze all the juice out of it before we even get to the seeds? And that's apparently what Therese Tetlahi wants to do. There's another issue here that I think I need to comment on, and that is that socialism, the difference between socialism and capitalism is that in capitalism, the means of production and distribution are in the hands of citizens, and they're governed by market forces. In a socialist system, the means of production and distribution are in the hands of the government, and they're not governed by market forces. They're governed by experts who think that they can make better decisions than the decisions of large numbers made by free markets or reasonably free markets. And it never works. That's why socialism always fails. They don't know what to manufacture, what to build, and if they do, they don't know how much to sell it for because there's no price fixing mechanism in a market. So the government should not be in business if it can at all be avoided. And I've mentioned before that there are two basic forms of government. There's a proprietary function and a governmental function. Governmental function would be police, fire, in my mind, corrections. Proprietary functions would be things like power and water. Businesses that can be and ordinarily are owned by private companies. So do we want to go into business as a government that rents out cable landing spaces so that we can make profits for our government that we can squander at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission? I don't think so. I don't think that that proprietary functions operated by the government should make a profit. For instance, the Power Authority. We know right now that the Power Authority with the LEAC and some of the other things that they do runs on almost a break-even basis. They accumulate capital in anticipation of future expenses, but the object of the Power Authority is not to make enough money selling power so that it can slough off some of the money that it makes selling power to the general government for the general government to spend as though it were a tax. This is not good policy. And that's exactly what Therese Tetlahi wants to do with her $100,000 fee. Now, somebody's going to say, well, should we let GTA have it for such a low price when they'd obviously pay more? I'd say yes, because we want to encourage that kind of business, and we don't want to see the government engaging in proprietary functions to make enough money to slough that money off into general government operations, which is what surveying of the Chamorro Land Trust leaseholds actually is. So that's my ruling. I've ruled on that one, Jose. Let's hear that gavel. Good editorial. Okay, and then in today's Daily News, there is an op-ed piece from, I don't have her name. Can you look that up for me, Jose?
Is this the Guam needs to increase gender wealth equality?
Yeah.
Holly Rustick.
Holly Rustick. She's the president of the Women's Chamber, right?
I think she used to be, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Holly Rustick. Women's Chamber. Guam needs to increase gender wealth equality. I see a couple words there that I just don't like the looks of. Gender and equality. And without even reading the editorial, I knew exactly, especially when I saw the name Holly Rustick. Holly Rustick is the one who said when the bill that would provide a 5% set-off for women bidding on government contracts came along, Holly Rustick said, yes, that's a good law. It will even the playing field for women. By giving women a 5% advantage, all we want is just to even the playing field by tipping it at a 5-degree angle. Well, this is more of the same stuff. Although Holly, I'll give her this, she's obviously learned some of the vocabulary of critical race theory, hasn't she? As we recently celebrated Liberation Day, we also celebrate the huge stride our island has made in containing Wuhan virus and reopening our economy. However, we need to do more to support women who have been, here we go, are you ready for this, Jose? Who have been marginalized. She caught on quick. You have to be able to tell people that you've been marginalized, because this is a key to getting something extra, something you didn't earn. Been marginalized by the pandemic. Now, how were people marginalized by the pandemic? I just don't, I see the words, I understand them, I know the meaning of them, but those words don't belong together in the same, the pandemic didn't marginalize anybody. And because to say marginalized comes from the word margin, and the margin is on the edge of something, right? So if you're on the edge, that means you're far away from the center where the goodies are. So how did the pandemic marginalize women any more than it marginalized men or any of the other sexes we've got tearing around the island nowadays? However, we need to do more to support women who have been further marginalized by the pandemic, because they can have the biggest positive impact on the economy. Now, how is that? According to the Guam Recovery Research Project, the hardest hit sector is Chamorro women under the age of 40 who spent 22 hours or more assisting their children with public school online education. They've been marginalized. Even before the pandemic, women earners had been marginalized, as on average in 2020, women in the U.S. earned 81 cents for every dollar men made. Now, I've seen statistics that came out of the Equal Opportunity commission that say that isn't correct.
There's a lot of missing context.
There's a lot of missing context, yeah. So if you compare a man and a woman, same education, roughly the same, who both work in a 30-year period, who both work 30 years, they'll be making about the same. But if the woman works only 20 out of the 30 years, when she gets to that 30th year, she probably isn't going to be making as much as the man. And of course, we can explain this by the fact that women have children, they stay home, they take care of their children, etc. That's how they that's why they're marginalized, see? So men should have half the children. I mean, this is really where they're going with this, right? It's so unfair that men don't have children and women get stuck with it. That is, if they don't understand their right to choose, quote unquote. Even, let's see, additionally, the Guam Department of Labor's 2017 economic census confirmed that women-owned businesses on island have ranged from between 9% to 22%. So what we need to do then is we need to go back to the beginning here. We need to do more to support women. So what we need to do then is have the government use the power of eminent domain and take some of these businesses by condemnation and then sell them to women at a cheap price to make these numbers come out right.
Seems fair.
Yeah. Yet the Clinton Global Initiative states that working women invest 90% of their income back into their families and community, compared with only 35% for men.
Again, I think there's some context missing here.
Absolutely. So how do we overcome this marginalization in Guam and empower women? Now I got to stop here and just tell you what I read in the paper just the other day. We've got Matson, an international company. Let's take a short break here and we'll come back to Matson.
Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So I broke off here talking about Matson Shipping Company, an international company, a big company. And the president or the general manager of Matson here on the island is a lady named Bernie Valencia. And there was a feature story in one of the papers just a couple of days ago about a lady named Herring. I can't remember her first name. It should be Red. Yeah. Who is the president of Atkins Kroll. Now that's high rolling, Atkins Kroll. And it was like a feature story, and they told how Ms. Herring came out here to work as a club mate at PIC. She did that. She worked hard, etc., got good at it. and moved up in the management of PIC and got to be a manager of more than one hotel before Atkins Kroll came along and snapped her up to be their president. I guess neither Herring nor Valencia got the memo that they'd been marginalized because they're women.
And we know that Mattson and Atkins are not in the margins as well.
Absolutely. So, but of course, the whole trick here is when you use the word marginalization, you're casting yourself as a victim. And anybody who understands the rules knows that if there is a victim, then there are victimizers. And by becoming a victim, you're making your case that the victimizers owe you something, that you should get some kind of an unearned increment or some kind of economic rent. So she says, so how do we overcome this marginalization in Guam and empower women? One of the first and most effective tools is for eligible individuals to get vaccinated against Wuhan virus. Guam is doing an amazing job in vaccination rates, with over 80% of the eligible population vaccinated. But we still have approximately 30,000 persons ineligible to be vaccinated due to being under 12. So as we celebrate nearing 80% of eligible vaccination rates, keep in mind this is not 80% of the entire population. Getting vaccinated also protects the health of our children, which allows them to return to school. Then more women can focus on work, school, or run their businesses, which in turn has an impact. So if this is an example of her skill as a writer, she is indeed on the margin. She starts out talking about marginalization and the bad rap that women are getting. Then she switches over and talks about vaccination and what the percentages are, etc. Then she goes on to say the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce advocates for employers continuing to allow teleworking for positions that can function online. For women caring for younger children, working from home can alleviate child care expenses, enable a more flexible schedule, and allow for transition into productivity-based work. For the 15% of parents who have opted for online learning in Guam Department of Education schools in the upcoming academic year, allowing a woman to work from home could make a huge difference in keeping her in the workforce. The Center for American Progress reported that in the United States, females only make up 26.5% of executive positions. This sounds like a job for the Guam legislature, that every company having a business license to do business on Guam must have 50% female executives. It's a level playing field, right, Jose?
Right as well, always, Bob.
Despite earning 50% of all undergraduate degrees and 59% of all master's degrees, comparatively, between 2014 and 2020, enrolled students at the university were 57% female. So they don't ever get an even break. They don't even get a chance. Well, wait a minute. They do get a chance to go to college, more than men. Overall, women are getting more education compared to men and should be favored for leadership and managerial jobs. Why aren't they? Because they've been marginalized. Critical race theory here. Studies show that men often apply for jobs when they only meet 60% of qualifications, but women only apply if they meet 100%. Women, it's time to step up and apply for these jobs too. So if there's a marginalization, it's apparently a self-marginalization. Employers, it's time to have good luck and see what the gender makeup is of your top-level executives. After all, research keeps growing that women leaders outperform men, especially in times of crisis. Well, if that's true, then the guys that run the companies will figure this out and they'll hire women because they want to make a profit. They don't care if it's a man or a woman, so long as that person can bring in profits. According to a survey by Glassdoor, 73% of women have not asked for a pay raise during the Wuhan virus pandemic, compared to 58% of men. To really put this in perspective, Elisa Place states that over the course of their careers, women will make $900,000 less than their male counterparts. Well, if they're bashful about asking for raises, whose fault is that? Additionally, if a woman owns her company, it's a good time to examine pricing. A FreshBooks survey reported that 20% of women believe they have to charge less than male counterparts to get and keep clients. Women, it's time to start valuing yourself more, negotiating your salary and asking for a raise. Employers, it's time to evaluate your human resources departments and ensure that women are getting paid the same as men and on pace with men in pay raises. To truly make a positive impact on the economy in Guam, we need to increase gender wealth economy. Why is that? To truly make a positive impact on the economy in Guam, we need to increase gender wealth equality. This sounds like more of this equity stuff, doesn't it? Vaccinations continue to be critical, as well as allowing continued teleworking in specific industries, hiring more women in executive roles, and increasing wages for women. Doing so will not only make a difference for women, but for our entire community. Well, if this is an example of the skill level of those who Ms. Rustic, Holly Rustic, thinks should be in the executive areas and companies, I don't know if I'm persuaded. I don't think I'm persuaded here. All right, so once again, identity politics, women marginalized. It's necessary to demarginalize women by giving them stuff. And let's see, I probably got Holly Rustic waiting in the green room. No, it's our Carl, and he's got a comment for the margins. Okay, Carl, tell us about margins.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, I just wanted to add a small side note regarding this subject. I watched an interview some time ago in which one of the members of Shark Tank, which I think you know about Shark Tank, right?
Yeah.
It's a show in which I think there's 4 entrepreneurs. I don't know who's there now, but it used to include Mark Cuban, Kevin O'Leary, Robert Herjavec, I think, and one other person. They're entrepreneurs, and someone comes on and makes a proposal for a new product or a new company, and these people bid to invest in this new company if they think it's got potential. So I watched this interview with Kevin O'Leary, who is he's not a feminist. He is a libertarian, and he's very successful.
I think his mother lived in Chicago and raised cows, didn't she?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
That could be in his family tree, but he is Canadian.
All right.
But he, in this interview, he was saying that he's found from experience that women tend to, all things being equal, tend to get better results as far as the bottom line. So women managers and of his companies that he invests in make up a healthy chunk. And that's not because the government came in and put their thumb on the scale and said, well, you need to have 50% of your investments in, women-owned companies. It had nothing to do with that. But he found that women's personality is suited many times for bringing in better results. That's just the bottom line. So he is very much pro-women, not generic and saying, well, these two are equal. I'm going to invest in this person here because it's a woman. he is very much bottom line oriented, and his experiences, on the whole, they've gotten better results, all things being equal, than men.
Well, if that's the case, then they should prosper in the business world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know any statistics on this, but I have a sense that the women that O'Leary is talking about, by the way, you don't know who Mrs. O'Leary is, Carl?
Oh, I remember, yeah, Mrs. O'Leary. Her cow kicked over the lamp and started the Chicago fire. At least that's the legend, anyway.
Yeah, there was a song, Mrs. O'Leary took a lantern to the shed, and when the cow kicked it over, this is what she said, "There'll be a hot time in the old town tonight." All these little tidbits of knowledge that you gather in here on Tall Tales.
Exactly.
So I suspect that, that the women that do well in Kevin O'Leary's world don't come in for an interview and start talking about marginalization.
No, the women there's been many women that have done well down through history. One of my favorites is Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher's nickname was the Iron Lady. She did not take any guff from anybody.
Yeah.
And she could go toe to toe and nose to nose, and she would not back down. But that was her personality. She was very iron-willed. And,
ask the Argentinians.
Exactly.
Yeah. So again, the packaging of this information is so critical. Now, if you had a Guam Women's Club, and the Guam Women's Club said, we are an active, skillful, ambitious, energetic group that can compete with anybody, and we aim to do just exactly that, I'd say go for it. Good on you. But if your president comes trotting out this marginalization stuff, and that we got to do something for them, that's not the kind of person that you want to hire. You want to hire somebody who's going to do something for you.
I saw another interview with Scott Adams, who is the creator of Dilbert, and he's a serial entrepreneur. He's got a lot of projects going, very successful. But one time he listed, in one of his speeches, he had a slide that came up listing all his failures, all the business failures that he had gone through before he hit it big with Dilbert and other investments. There were 36. And he's a man. Somehow he didn't flash his man card.
Well, he must have been marginalized. That's the reason that he had 36 failures, right?
Yeah.
There can be no other reason. Not that he didn't.
Because you're a man doesn't mean you walk in and everything is just wonderful. I mean, 36 failures, and he said that he stopped counting. That doesn't even count as personal failures. That's just business failures, investment ideas, new inventions, products, partnerships that flopped. He had a restaurant or two that didn't go well.
Well, again, Carl, it must have been because he was marginalized, because there's no other reason that people are not successful in business. That's what you got to look for.
Well, that seems to be the attitude, is that if you're a man, everything is easy. The doors fly open, and it's just, so easy. You just flash your man card, and the world opens up to you. When in fact, every successful person usually has a list, just like Scott Adams' list, of failure after failure after failure after failure. And they just had to pick themselves up and start over again, or, try another idea, another approach. And the same with women, that have been successful. They've had many things that didn't work out, and it's just,
So I want to keep bringing it back to a theme here, and the theme is that people have to take individual responsibility. They have to take responsibility for themselves. And this constant moaning about marginalization and the oppressed and the oppressor, and we don't get a fair shake, and you got to give us a 5% advantage on government contracts in order to level the playing field. People that have that kind of attitude are probably not going to be very successful, because no one, the shrewd entrepreneur doesn't find that is a very favorable characteristic in business. You're looking for somebody who has a can-do attitude, somebody who doesn't know what can't be done. And this constant, this oppressor-oppressed marginalization, as though no one has responsibility for his own fate, is really counterproductive. It's the old saying, the old criticism of liberals, or nowadays progressives. A real progressive knows that it's much easier to change the world than to change himself. Or maybe I should say change the world than to change themselves. Right,
Yeah,
Carl?
Yes, and that approach completely gives up all their power to make any change. It's just they're helpless. They're victims of outside forces, and there's nothing they can do about it. So, they're not. At a certain point, you throw your hands up and say, "Well, it's, poor me. I've been victimized by, this or that, or society, or."
Unless they fix it for me, I don't have a chance. I can't fix anything myself. I can't take any responsibility myself. Okay, Carl. Well, thanks for chiming in on that one.
Okay, Bob.
All right, so much for the daily news. I notice that Jesse's in the green room right now. Jesse, I got to do the post, and then the first item on my calendar, on my card, is, in fact, Tall Tales versus Melvin Wonpat. So that will be a really good place to talk about separatists, but you're going to have to be a little patient till I get there. Okay, so let's take a short break, and then we'll come back to the post.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
Mescla, read all about it. Check out Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon for lunch. Serving up some savory seafood specials such as spicy garlic shrimp, candied salmon, or better yet, the local favorite, snapper or shrimp escabeche. Available only during lunch hours. Make sure to come down and try these tasty specials and more. Call 969-2652 for more info or to make a reservation. Located at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon, Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. A true taste of Guam.
Okay, so here we go with the post. $553 million is on the line, and Gov Guam didn't do its homework. Yeah, well, this ties into an item that we're going to get to on the card about the mayor and dogs. So maybe if the mayors get their way, dogs won't be eating homework, and Gov Guam will do a better job. Guam is unlike many localities on the U.S. mainland, and that is a fact and an inconvenience we all have come to know too well. The rules aren't the same for Guam, from something as simple as shipping when we shop for goods online to the more serious Supplemental Security Income Program benefits. If we're unable to hold down a job because of a disability, we don't get SSI benefits. And here we go again. Simply because of where we live. Well, there's nothing simple about it. If you understand why the Congress has not seen fit to extend SSI benefits to some of the territories. We also don't get all of the items we want to purchase online because many merchants don't ship to Guam. Does that mean that we're marginalized? I guess so. And what was it? President Kreis at the university got his skivvies all bunched up because he couldn't get something on the Disney Channel or something?
Couldn't get the Disney Channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was marginalized.
He was marginalized. There are just too many nuances with living on Guam that the federal government or bureaucrats in its system are not familiar with. Well, whose fault is that? We should sit back and complain about being marginalized as opposed to being active and getting out there and spreading the word. So when the federal government asks for the government of Guam's input, especially with what is allowed and what isn't in the spending of what remains and federal pandemic dollars for the island, we expect our local government to do its homework, speak up, and get clarity on Guam-specific concerns. But GovGuam didn't see the need to do that in the case of $553 million in federal pandemic funding that's sitting in the GovGuam Bank of Choice, awaiting the federal government via the U.S. Department of Treasury's final rules. A lot of interest has been shown by the community in the breakdown of that $553 million. But we as a community have not really seen the details of that plan. Neither has the leadership of the Guam legislature. A roundabout way of getting a glimpse of that plan would have been to see what the governor's office or the executive branch in general submitted to the U.S. Treasury as part of the phase to submit comments before Treasury releases the final spending rules. The final rules are expected about 2 weeks from now. We asked for the executive branch response to Treasury's request for input. We were told the administration did not submit comments or plans specific to Guam to the federal government. Similarly, when the Guam Daily Post requested comments GovGuam submitted on the interim final rules, the Post was told by the governor's office that no submissions were made. Too busy.
Isn't that why the governor went across the pond or went over to the U.S.?
Well, not to deal with this particular matter of submitting this information.
Okay.
On July 26, Speaker Therese Delahi also requested copies of comments, questions, a plan, or a draft plan submitted by the governor's administration regarding the U.S. Treasury's interim final rules. Instead of submitting Guam-specific responses, Ricky Orsini, the governor's policy director, told the speaker that GovGuam participated in a coordinated response with the National Association of State Budget Officers and the National Association of State Auditors. Boy, that really makes me feel good. Hey, you guys over there, you got a shuffle that we can get lost in? But did the National Association really do justice to Guam-specific concerns? One way to find out is to read parts of the feedback the National Association submitted on behalf of places like Guam. Question from the U.S. Treasury: are there other types of services or costs that Treasury should consider as eligible uses to respond to the public health impacts of the Wuhan virus? Describe how these respond to the Wuhan virus public health emergency. Now, here's the answer that the National Association submitted on our behalf. The broad range of services discussed by the FAQ appears adequate. In other words, a non-answer. Question from the U.S. Treasury: are there other types of services or costs that Treasury should consider as eligible uses to respond to the negative economic impacts of Wuhan virus? Answer from the National Association: all categories appear to be listed. Boy, these are really thoughtful answers and so Guam specific, aren't they? Question from the U.S. Treasury. What new categories of water and sewer infrastructure, if any, should Treasury consider to support state, local, and tribal governments in mitigating the negative effects of climate change? Discuss emerging technologies and processes that support the resiliency of water and sewer infrastructure. Discuss any challenges faced by states and local governments when pursuing or implementing climate-resilient infrastructure projects. Answer from the National Association. We have no comment on this question. Dynamic, isn't it? Clearly, whoever was in charge in GovGuam didn't do their homework. They didn't do any work at all. The lack of Guam-specific input and feedback from GovGuam on matters that could help bring crucial relief to island residents leaves one beyond speechless. Let me try that. After I read that, I was speechless. Yeah. Well, we got two good editorials here today, two real editorials. They lay out the facts, they tell you what's wrong, they tell you who screwed up, and they tell you what the fix is. Good. And then the Daily News has the advantage of having their editorial right next to Holly Rustic's. So what a contrast, right? So today I'm going to do something I've only done once before. When it comes to the Blue Star today, we have a double header. Doesn't happen very often, but I wish it could happen every day, that we could have good, meaty editorials every day, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. Okay, so we're up at the halftime show. Jesse, hang on. Right after the halftime show, I'm going to go into Tall Tales and Melvin Wanpat.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Get the vaccine, and that's an order. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Americans serving in the military will apparently be hearing that soon. Defense Secretary Austin ready to add the coronavirus vaccine to the list the military is required to get.
Right now, only fully FDA-approved vaccines can be mandated for the military. All 3 U.S. vaccines are still under emergency use authorization. Secretary Austin previously said he was not comfortable with mandating the vaccine until it was fully approved by the FDA, but with Delta cases rising, the Secretary of Defense may have changed his mind.
Fox's Lauren Blanchard. The administration also considering a mandate that all foreign visitors be COVID inoculated before traveling to the U.S. Currently, inbound travelers are required to have a negative COVID test. More than 100,000 new coronavirus infections were reported in the U.S. Wednesday. That's the highest daily total in 6 months. So many migrants are being released into McAllen, Texas. The city has built an emergency tent complex
being used to house illegal immigrants who have been released from Border Patrol custody. The city says they have to do this because Border Patrol has been releasing so many illegals in their city that some of them are being stranded out on the streets and they've got nowhere to go. So they are now building this compound to house some of those folks. They say it has to be done, and they're being very critical of the federal government.
Fox's Bill Malusian reports the city will move that tent complex closer to the border in response to complaints from residents. 10 migrants are dead, 20 others injured in South Texas. They were passengers in a van that flipped on on its side and slid into a utility pole Wednesday afternoon. That van was built to carry 15 people. Northern California, much of the town of Greenville on the edge of the Plumas National Forest has been destroyed by the Dixie wildfire. Several homes and much of the town's business district have been reduced to smoldering rubble. America is listening to Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Fox News.
With its city council's defund the police movement stalled, that question will be decided by voters in Minneapolis.
This November, Minneapolis voters will decide whether they actually want to end their current police department. And now there is a $1 million campaign asking voters to vote yes. The group Yes for Minneapolis has gathered roughly $983,000 in support of replacing the police department with the public safety agency. Currently, the Minneapolis City Charter requires a certain number of police officers per population. So the Minneapolis City Council cannot legally reduce the number of police officers unless voters approve changing that rule. There is concern the $1 million Yes for Minneapolis fund in favor of ending the police department is largely outside dollars.
Fox's Matt Finn. A dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, an area where there's too little oxygen to support marine life, is larger this year, according to researchers with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, who report the area off the coast of Louisiana and Texas now covers about 6,300 square miles. It's caused in part by runoff from the Mississippi River carrying nitrogen and phosphorus. Arson charges have now been filed against the sailor suspected of starting the fire that destroyed a Navy warship.
Ryan Sawyer Mays, a seaman apprentice, is charged with aggravated arson and willful hazarding of a vessel, which means the USS Bonhomme Richard was put in danger of damage or loss, according to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The fire was started in a storage area investigators say Mays' station on board had access to. The fire, which burned for 4 days, left so much damage, the vessel was scrapped. Mays said during the probe into the fire he did not start it. However, other sailors described Mays as having disdain for the Navy. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
Okay, here I am. So we have disposed of Jimmy and Cotney. It's time for the card. And this is what I've got on the card for today. I have Still More Tall Tales versus Melvin Wampet. I've got mares versus dogs. I hope I'm not barking up the wrong tree on this one. I've got the people versus wise owl. You know, and this one's it's kind of funny, Jose. The people versus wise owl. Some people will say it's a hoot.
Who?
I've got the Pope versus Cardinal Bessieux. I've got Tall Tales versus Rapinoe and some others, for which the word Benetsu is very, very appropriate. Yeah. And once again, when I get there, Jose, I want you to guard me against lapsing into Schadenfreude.
I'll do my best.
Very tempting.
It's very easy.
Yeah, and along the same lines, I've got Cuomo versus hypocrisy. And then progressives versus us, the woke versus English, academia versus the folks, eco-fascists versus freedom. So let's start out with Still More Tall Tales versus Melvin Wampet. Now, you know, the backstory here, or the background, is that I gave a speech at the Rotary Club of Guam. And I talked about the fact that no one is working on colonizing the island of Guam or the territory of Guam. We have something called the Decolonization Commission, but the full name of it is more than that. It's the Commission on Decolonization by providing self-determination to Chamorros. So although they claim they're talking about decolonization, I pointed out to the Rotarians that all of us live in a colony. We live on an island of Guam that is, in fact, a colony. So if we're talking decolonization, it affects all of us, not just Chamorros. And I also went into the fact that the so-called choices that we have are not really choices, because statehood is really, as a practical matter, not going to happen in an island that has only 170,000 people. Free association can't happen until Guam becomes independent, which means independence. The Congress has the ability to set Guam free and let Guam be independent, no question about it. And the architects of this whole decolonization mechanism obviously have set it up to funnel the discussion towards independence for a couple of the reasons that I mentioned. I mentioned all this at the Rotary, and I was somewhat critical of the Commission on Self-Determination, which I call the Commission on Chamorro Independence. And I pointed out that we really have a pretty nice setup right now with our favorable tax treatment, et cetera, as a territory or colony, if you like the sound of that better. And for me, I would much prefer to see Guam remain as it is than become independent. Well, the story was published in a couple of media outlets, and after that, a press release issued. I have the press release in front of me. It's on the letterhead titled Commission on Decolonization. It shows the names of Lourdes Leon Guerrero as the governor, Joshua Tenorio as the lieutenant governor, and Melvin Wampet as the, director. Doesn't show the names of the commissioners. There are 11 commissioners altogether. It doesn't show their names at all. And Let me see here. Where is it? Yeah, so the subtitle of the paper is Commission on Decolonization addresses and corrects misleading uninformed remarks on decolonization and self-determination. There's no signature block on the letter. There's nothing that would lead a reader to think that this is anything other than something that was commanded by and approved by the Commission on Decolonization. So when I got it, I sent a sunshine law request to Melvin Wanpat, and I asked for the call, notice, and minutes of the meeting wherein the commission approved the text of and authorized the transmittal of the press release, which was the subject of the PNC News article of July 26. The email addresses of each commissioner and Wanpat's email address. That's what I asked for. And I got a response that says, requested the call, notice, minutes, etc. meeting wherein the commission approved the text and authorized the transmittal of the press release, which was the subject of the PNC News article, etc. And the next column is provided. Two things were provided. An email message from a reporter from PNC named Don Sulat, and two, a request for responses from Commission on Self-Determination's Natasha Suba to task members, and then notes or justification. And this is what it says: no meeting was called for the formulation of the response. In other words, the commission did not require the preparation of this press release, did not approve it, and did not authorize its release. I don't know this, but my suspicion is that they didn't know anything about it until they read about it in the newspapers like I did. So when I saw that, and then there's some emails attached. There's an email from Natasha Suba, who polled 3 of the commissioners because Sulat wanted to interview each of the commissioners. So she polled each of the commissioners, and this is what she said. I can find it. Bear with me for a second here. Oh, here's what she said. On July 22, she said, half a day TF chairs. Please see forwarded email from PNC reporter Don Sulat. If we could please get your responses ASAP, please let me know if you have any questions. Siju Maase. Now, those 3 people are commissioners. And here are the responses from the commissioners. Commissioner Michael Bavakwa. Half a day, Natasha. I just spoke with Adrian, that's Adrian Cruz, another commissioner, and he's suggesting the Commission on Self-Determination should respond rather than any individual messages from the task forces. I think that would probably be best. And then an alternate commissioner, Dewey Huffer, said, I agree. So that's 2 commissioners and an alternate. I don't know exactly how that works, but let's assume that an alternate commissioner is a commissioner. So you've got 3 commissioners communicating with one another outside of a meeting about commission business, right? Having a discussion and making a decision concerning how an employee of the commission is going to deal with Sulat's request, communicating that back to Suba and ultimately to Wanpat, who then fires off the press release. So when I saw that, I sent a notice today to the commission, to all 11 of the commissioners, and it's a notice of violation. And this is what it says. Honorable Commissioners, on July 29, as you were July 26, your executive director issued ultra-virus, a press release on your behalf. Ultra-virus is a fancy Latin term which means outside his authority, right? That's what ultra-virus means. On July 22, the executive director, via Natasha Suba, attempted to poll 3 commissioners' recommission business in violation of the open government law. Your executive director's press release went out on commission letterhead bearing this subject line. Commission on Decolonization addresses and corrects misleading uniform remarks on decolonization and self-determination. Now notice it says the commission does this. That's what the letter on commission letterhead says. The content of the press release would lead the reader to believe that it was indeed your position, meaning the commission, not your executive directors. There is no signature block or any other attribution at the end of the press release. Per the reference, you did not meet to authorize the press release. They admitted that in their response to my sunshine. Thus, the press release is both misrepresentation because the reader thinks this is coming from the commission when it's not. Commission may very well not have even known about it until they read about it. Thus, the press release is both misrepresentation and ultra-virus the powers of your executive director. He doesn't have the ability to speak on behalf of the commission. Commission staffer Suva attempted to poll 3 commissioners. Commissioner Michael Lujan Bavacqua responded, "Half a day, Natasha. I just spoke to Adrian." Okay, so open government law violation there. Members of boards and commissions don't discuss board or commission matters outside of meetings of the board or commission. And he is suggesting the COD should respond rather than any individual messages from the task force. I think that would probably be best, and he sent that from his iPhone. The attempted polling of 3 commissioners and the responses of Commissioners Bavacqua and Cruz and alternate Commissioner Huffer is an obvious violation of 5 GCA Section 105, which reads in pertinent part, "No chance meeting, informal assemblage, or electronic communication shall be used to decide or deliberate public business in circumvention of the spirit or requirements of this chapter." Well, that's exactly what they did. They used electronic communication to deliberate and decide public business in circumvention of the spirit or the requirements of the chapter. My memo goes on to say the spirit of the chapter is set out in the first sentence of 5 GCA Section 8102, which reads, "The legislature declares it is the policy of the territory that formulation of public policy and decisions is public and shall not be conducted in secret." The secret here is that the executive director attempted to coax 3 commissioners into violating Section 8105, who then prompted the misrepresentation and ultra-virus act of your executive director. Our law treats violation of the open government law as a serious matter as reflected in 5 GCA section 8115B, which reads, each member of a public agency who attends a meeting of a public agency where action is taken in violation of any provision of this chapter with knowledge of the fact that the meeting is in violation thereof is guilty of a misdemeanor. Section 8114 provides at least a theoretical remedy for your executive director's misrepresentation and ultra-virus acts. Action voided. Any action taken at a meeting in violation of any section of this chapter shall be void and of no effect, provided that this nullification of actions taken at such meetings shall not apply to any commitment otherwise legal affecting the public debt. Holding a press release that has been published void is somewhat like trying to put toothpaste back into the tube. You can't unring the bell, Jose. I am, however, requesting that you take appropriate action. Issue a press release declaring that the press release in question is not yours and doesn't state your position. Instruct your executive director that he is not the commission, which speaks only through motions and resolutions. Advise me that you have accomplished these remedial measures. Respectfully submitted, Robert Klitzkie. So that was my note to the commission. I sent that off this afternoon. So we'll see what we'll see what action results from this. I wouldn't be surprised if Melvin Wonpat will come out with another press release critical of me, which seems to be something that he's pretty good at, right?
But it remains to be seen if it's on letterhead or not.
Uh-huh. True enough. Well, he could always play that, well, you know, I'm not speaking from my official position. This is just my personal opinion. Angel Saban style, right? Okay, so what happened to Jesse? Jesse, it's your turn. You waited all this time? Well, if you want to call in, I'll let you chime in on this one. Okay, next item on the card is mares versus dogs. An existing process for residents to legally kill wild animals could be used by island mayors to address the long-standing concern of dangerous stray dogs in villages. I hate to sound like a naysayer all the time, but I've never seen a dangerous stray dog in all my years on Guam, running, etc., right?
Ooh.
No.
I have.
Really?
Yeah. It actually wasn't one stray. It was a pack of them.
And what did they do?
They hunted me down. But I didn't allow them to sneak up on me. It was in my neighborhood. That's another story, though. It was very strange.
Well, let's talk about dogs for a minute. I see dogs that come running out and barking like crazy, right? But if they are not dogs that are actually have masters, they're paper tigers. If I can make my analogies there. And if you make a step towards them, they'll cower. And if you really want to have an effect on them, just pick up a rock and show them the rock, and away they go. So I've never seen stray dogs that would actually approach me and bite me, or even try to bite me. I suspect that if I were to show fear and start to run away, that might be a little different. So it's different, though, if you have a dog that has a master that's in his master's yard and you come by.
Protecting.
Yeah, he may be protecting his master or showing off or something like that. I have had problems like that, but not with stray dogs. Not that I want to set myself up as the expert on stray dogs. During a monthly meeting Wednesday, members of the Mayor's Council of Guam expressed their frustration over a lack of available space at the government-funded animal shelter. Several said their efforts to catch aggressive strays endangering their residents have been delayed because they were told Guam animals in need had full kennels. Gain has done this for a year already. We're not getting any better, and there's a lot of dogs that are roaming the streets. And they've attacked kids again. Paul McDonald, mayor of Agana Heights, said, "School is opening and it's getting worse. What are we going to do with Gain?" Council President Jesse Alec, also known as Smart, Petey Mayer, said he's discussed the insufficient space to house captured stray dogs with lawmakers and Adelup. But the cause of the problem ultimately is a lack of funding. Wow. Who else can help us other than the administration, other than the legislature? That's the bottom line, because it's about money, right? It's about how much money. Gain needs to expand their capacity, he told members. So, you know, maybe we could build a facility that would help. I've heard estimates as many as 60,000 stray dogs on the island. That would require a lot of money to provide. Somehow, I don't think that's much of a solution. Let's see. And I know that we've talked about it, but unfortunately, all it has been, that's all it's been, talk. So I'll continue to have that conversation with the legislature and the administration. As mayors and vice mayors continue to air their frustrations with not being able to address complaints and concerns about aggressive stray dogs in villages, a possible solution was floated that allows village leaders and even residents to take matters into their own hands. A, quote, depredation permit currently administered by the Department of Agriculture allows for the killing of feral or wild animals. Now, I don't think we have any feral dogs on the island, at least once again. And I used to run all over this island, you know, back in my marathoning days. I've seen stray dogs, but you know the old saying that man is the dog's best friend. And the unfortunate situation is that a lot of people feel sorry for the stray dogs, and they feed them, which is the worst.
And then leave.
Yeah. So I don't think we have, in other words, feral dogs would be dogs that are no longer domesticated, because 2 or 3 generations of dog have lived out in the boonies and have been able to survive without a human tending to them at all. While the application specifically mentions its use is meant to allow for the legal killing of deer, pigs, and birds, the document also offers applicants to disclose the intent to cull other wild animals. Well, are stray dogs wild animals? Other laws, like those governing the possession and use of firearms to kill the animals covered by the permit, would still need to be followed, according to Alec. If the dog is wild or feral, then it can be included as other, right? And again, all of that is subject to the approval of the Director of Agriculture. If you feel that you're able to and you have the capacity to execute this depredation, then you can collectively or singularly apply for this depredation permit. Members shared their support for the idea. When we talk about depredation in regard to feral animals, I agree with every one of my colleagues that this is something that needs to be considered. Jesse Gogwe, mayor of Chalampago, Ordat, said, "Not because we're trying to go after someone's family pet, but we're trying to address the feral problem on this island, be it dogs or pigs that are tearing up farms and people's crops or garden. This is a real problem. Gogwe isn't licensed to carry a gun, but he said he would be the first one to get in line for one if the council approves a collective effort to use the permitted process to lower the number of stray animals. I don't know. You know, we're in an urban environment here. I somehow can't warm up to the idea of people running around with rifles shooting at stray dogs. I just have this, you know, in Wisconsin, every deer season, a good deer season is when the hunters kill more deer than hunters.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. We can solve it here. We must solve it here because nobody is paying attention. The Mayor's Council said it would discuss the matter with the Department of Agriculture, particularly in light of a recent law that reformed multiple parts of Guam's animal cruelty statutes. I remember when somebody shot a dog and killed it, Judge Berdalio said it's not cruelty to animals. But I believe the statute was changed so that the wanton killing of a dog may very well be cruelty to animals. The policy has been considered for some time now. Alec disclosed he was hoping to pilot a collaborative culling project to get rid of the pack of wild dogs Teton residents have complained about. Plans changed after the situation became controversial between residents of the neighborhood and members of an animal advocacy group who were trying to humanely capture the strays. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It seems as if most of us are okay with a depredation permit. And if we are, then I want to work towards that because it will satisfy the majority of us, which means it would satisfy the majority of the people, Alex said. The louder the voice doesn't mean they're right. What I'm saying is it's loud out there because we have opposition, but it doesn't mean they're right. We know because we're the ones seeing the effects. We see the people hurt. So they're not going to decide this question based on who can holler the loudest. That's a novel approach. I didn't know we ever did that.
Works at the legislature.
Yeah. Ask Joe St. Augustine. Oh, ask Joe St. Augustine. He'll tell you.
And it helps to have a chili dog.
Yeah. So
this is an interesting discussion because I've lived in several places, as you have in the States, Bob, and there is a different mindset of keeping a dog here on this island as opposed to an ownership of a dog in the States. Say, for instance, where I used to live in Connecticut, leash laws, yard laws, and your dog became stray, you paid heavily if your dog was captured by animal control.
Yeah, and the dog had to have a collar and he had to have a license
registered.
On the collar. Yeah.
I mean, those laws are here too, but it's always never minded also.
Yeah. Well, where I grew up, you had to keep your dog under control in the summertime, but in the wintertime, you could let him run wild. Really?
They're not going to go far.
Yeah. Well, and there's not much the dog could damage during the wintertime when there's a lot of snow on the ground, right?
But I also have friends who grew up in Jamaica and some of the Caribbean islands also, and the mindset of a dog or keeping a dog is the same thing here in Guam. It's kind of similar to Hawaii also, where strays are really pets.
Yeah,
they're just not in the house.
They're strays, but they're very familiar. They get fed, etc. Some people name them.
We had neighborhood dogs when I grew up in Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, if you really want to see a different approach, go to Hanoi. In Hanoi, there's one whole street where you can buy dog meat, an entire street. Yeah. I don't think that would work very well here. Okay, well, let's see. We're a little late on the seventh inning stretch, aren't we? Let's take the seventh inning stretch, and then we'll talk to another Joe. And we've got a doctor that wants to chime in here, too.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and see to us, Mahasi.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Okay, so here we are. Pam Duvall has an interesting post here. Pam says, Bob, if you remember, I wrote a letter to the editor in regards to the stray dogs and dumping a couple years ago. It's evident this problem has been ignored. Look at the numbers of dogs on the streets. Lack of funding is the excuse. Well, Governor has her pocketbook full of dollars. How about throwing some of that at Gain? I didn't see that in the responses, though, that were sent off to Washington.
Gain is a government nonprofit, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, they contract with the government of Guam to be the sort of the dog, what we would call the dog pound in the States, right? Okay, let's find out what another Joe wants to tell us about stray dogs. Go ahead, another Joe.
Hey, Bob. Yeah, I definitely do not be killing dogs. Culturally, like you said, dog's a man's best friend.
Well, actually, the man is the dog's best friend.
There you go. Either way, but so there's two massive efforts. First is to catch the dog, then is to house the dog appropriately. And so I don't know. I don't know what the answer would be as far as housing it, but I would think that there's a good thing to ship them stateside. I don't know if there's that much of an interest in Booney dogs stateside in the tens of thousands. I have a doubt. I doubt that, but you could probably. That did say work into compact impact.
Of course.
And see if the military would be willing to fly them for free stateside.
You think there'd be a demand for Guam Booney dogs in the States?
I'm hoping, but either way, I mean, you can work it into some kind of compact impact thing. Say, hey, you guys you've been shortchanging us. Why don't you at least do this for us? Right? We'll catch them, and you ship them off stateside and find homes for them. That and a bunch of other stuff we can do. Maybe like pressure them into doing. But hey, yeah, definitely do not kill them. But we should definitely keep up to date and let people know what the efforts are. I mean, we spent a year in lockdown, so we should at least give it a year of effort. I think, Uncle Bob, what do you think? Is that fair?
Well, what Dr. Tom Poole wants to do is capture female dogs, neuter them, and then turn them loose.
I don't think that's going to have an effect, Uncle Bob, because I don't think the male dogs are going to be chasing them around, because I think a big part of, first of all, they can smell the female in heat. That's what drives them crazy.
I don't think that neutering a dog, a bitch, if you will, keeps the bitch from going into heat. So, a lot of male dogs would be engaging in meaningless acts when it comes to procreation. That's Tom Poole's solution.
But I don't know. He's the expert on kebab. All I know is that we've had our dogs. You know, the choice of the elders is to have them fix the females, and before the effect was drastic. Before the females were fixed, the male dogs all around the neighborhood would be sneaking in, and we'd be having litters of puppies, you know, unexpected.
Then after you had them fixed, you didn't have any more puppies. I wonder how that happened, another Joe.
Well, we didn't have male dogs hanging around as much. Because I would catch them. You know, because you know the natural effect when they have to be around long enough, and then there's the natural process which keeps them trapped long enough, and so I usually half the time I catch them. The other half of the time I don't. That's when the females get pregnant. But I know they're around. But after they were fixed, didn't detect them at all. Not even hanging around. Anyway, thanks for your time on Kebab. I appreciate it. Just keep listening.
Yeah, well, as far as I'm concerned, when Dr. Tom Poole speaks about dogs, I'm going to do what we're supposed to do in the 21st century, follow the science. So if Tom Poole says that's the way to do it, I will follow the science. Okay, so we've got a doctor on the line here that wants to talk about political status. He wasn't there when we just finished that topic, but since we're in between topics, no harm, no foul. So what do you want to tell me about political status, Doc?
Hey, how day, Senator? How you going? Hey, really quickly, I was going to mention something about stray dogs, and that is, I think the key to the problem is people feeding them to keep them around their property, and they don't really have an owner, and then the person feeding them is not legally responsible for them. And I think that maybe the law might be changed to make people who feed dogs legally responsible for them in all respects. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. But, you know, dogs are a problem in terms of more of a nuisance, I think, more than anything else for a lot of people. But anyway.
Well, in my own particular case, you know, they don't bother me in my activities. I don't like the sight of it, though. You know, to see 4 or 5 dogs hanging around, being stray dogs, or like that situation we had in where was it, in Datydale, where there was, you know, like about 40 dogs in a pack. Teedson in a pack. Yeah.
Right.
It's not what we want to present to tourists or even ourselves, because it looks like the Wild West.
Yeah, there's a pack of about 8 or 9 that run around the 3 condo areas that I live in. There's 3 condos and kind of a group, and they get into the garbage and they tear things up, and I mean they're really just a headache in terms of you know, just dragging garbage out of garbage cans and stuff like that. And but anyway, yeah, but hey, I was going to talk about political status, but not necessarily just political status, but the role and function and powers of boards and commissions. And boards and commissions, when they make statements, and whether they're official statements or even statements as if they're talking as if they're a group, that's a special kind of public communication. That kind of communication is not just simply somebody getting quoted by the media on something. That's that's something that should have the full backing of the people who are serving in that board after they've made some determinations or discussions. It's not simply, I have an email account and I can send anything I want on behalf of the commission. And I think that in a way it could just be an experience. It could be that, a mistake was made, and if a mistake was made, particularly in your case, and they said these things, say, excuse me.
Wait a minute, Ron. They confessed. When I sent in my sunshine request, they confessed that there was no they, it was he.
Right. And so then he should apologize and say that was beyond my authority. And and fess up to it. And that's what, if I were advising, if I had, and I've been on 9 major boards and commissions here in the last 25 years, if this was my executive director, that would be my input as a board member. You made a mistake, don't do it again, and please restrain yourself and only talk on behalf of the commission when we ask you to. And I think that there's something to that. And in terms of, just simply respecting that a commission is supposed to be an official activity done on behalf of the government in this particular case, or a nonprofit, depending on what their place is in a structure.
Well, the thinking behind a board or commission is that if you have a collective decision-making process, the quality of your decisions improves. If a board or commission has a regularly scheduled, set out agenda, they meet, confer, discuss, decide, you're going to get a higher quality decision than if one man does it, one person does it. So in the case of the Chamorro Independence Commission here, if Juan Pat thinks he is the commission, then we should send the other 11 home. Don't be horsing around with any stipends or anything like that, and don't call it the Decolonization Commission. Just call it Melvin Juan Pat and let it go at that.
Right. Boards and commissions should not be singular individuals. I certainly think almost everybody would agree with that. Boards and commissions are supposed to be, representing the collective group. No doubt. I've seen this kind of behavior a lot of times before, but never to this extent. I've never seen like a major press release cut and things like that. I've heard directors imply to other people, oh, this is what the commission believes or thinks or whatever, but never in the sort of way, the sort of detailed, sort of line-by-line way that it was in the response that was made to you. I've just never seen that before.
Yeah, and let's hope. Quite unusual. Yeah, and let's hope that we don't see it again. So one would hope that when the commission gets this at the next meeting, they'll be trimming some wings and setting some records straight and making sure this, as you say, doesn't happen again. Right. There is misunderstanding, though, about boards and commissions, like the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. The role of the commissioners versus the executive director. And the best one is the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission, the vocabulary at the Civil Service Commission is that there's the Civil Service Commission and then there's a Civil Service Commission board. As though, as though you could have a board when you've got a commission, and as though the bureaucracy is the commission, and then those 7 people that meet and decide cases are the board.
Right. Yeah, there's often these kinds of nomenclature or labeling issues dealing with powers and structures of powers. And a commission has a specific type of function and utility in government. And I don't know, I'm just kind of, I've never seen more, and it's not just this particular commission, but I've never seen more lack of understanding, particularly on boards, than I've seen here. That is, people who get appointed to these boards is as if they don't really understand what their function is on the board and what their purpose is on the board quite often. And I'm not speaking to this board that you're having the conflict with. I'm just talking about boards in general.
Hey, Ron, pardon me. I got to head for Churchill Downs. If you want to hang on,
sure.
We'll put you back on after Churchill Downs.
Sure, absolutely, sir. Okay.
Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Pastrami is back at Subway. Pepper-crusted beef layered with crispy pickles, mustard, and melted provolone cheese. Nothing comes close to the pleasure of sinking your teeth into that chewy, juicy, well-seasoned pastrami. It's happiness in a sub. Head down to the nearest Subway restaurant and satisfy your craving for the deli perfection that is pastrami. Subway. Eat fresh. Pastrami sub is available to all Subway locations on Guam and Saipan, including NCS, for a limited time only.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, heading down the home stretch for another episode of Tall Tales. And I've got a hanger on here. Ron McNinch was having so much fun that he just camped out in the bleachers here at Churchill Downs, and now he's back on the air. Hi, Ron.
Hey, how are you, sir? Hey, I was just going to mention also just a couple of things about boards, because I think it's very, very important. Sometimes on Guam, we end up having what I would call mushroom boards, and that is boards end up getting fed on crap and kept in the dark, and that is they're not really allowed to do their function or purpose due to a number of reasons. Like they're not really allowed by the inertia-driven bureaucracy to actually do their jobs, and they're kind of shielded from or diverted from doing their jobs by the bureaucracy that they have to work with, because board members often don't have support, they don't have staff to assist them, they simply are required to rely on whatever is fed to them in the information stream. And that's unfortunate, because actually boards can exercise very healthy powers. The first thing any board member should do when they get appointed, particularly to a public board, is read the law and then follow the law, and also read and follow all of the laws that apply to the structure and process of boards. And that includes the Open Government Law, that includes the the Sunshine Act, and everything else. And that's what they're supposed to do. And unfortunately, a lot of times board members get talked out of doing what they think that their conscience, tells them they should probably do, which is probably the right decision. The decision is to follow exactly the role of the board as specified in the law, and also follow the laws, particularly if it's the laws of Guam or federal laws and procedures or whatever else. And quite often they get scared away from doing that, and that's just unfortunate. And there's no real enforcement authority on Guam to keep people on track when they get off track on these boards.
Well, that really should be the governor's job. A governor, one would think a governor would have someone whose job was boards and commissions. The selection, the keeping track of vacancies, the confirmation process, and making sure that training materials were available for everyone as soon as he or she were sworn into a board, that he'd be given a binder that would tell them, here's your organic statute, study it. Here's the open government law, study it. Here's the sunshine law, study it. Here's what you need to know about finance, etc. Instead of just basically turning them over to the director of the agency, who will, in some cases, program the board members just the way he wants them to be programmed.
Right, and there's a key point that you just mentioned, indirectly but also directly. Everything that you mentioned is directly in the ethics law. The things that the board and the director are supposed to be doing are exactly that. And by the way, the person I worked with, I'm on the Guam Board of Education, of course, and the person I worked with in the current governor's office, his name is Mr. Weekly, very professional, 100%, direct and deliberate. He knows his job. He was very helpful. And then within our board, we have a whole bunch of training that ensures that we don't micromanage, that we don't we follow the law very specifically and with a mindful, open way of thinking, so that we don't violate the law, and we also, on the other hand, make sure that we do our jobs in a way that best represents the public. But unfortunately, a lot of boards on Guam either don't have that ethos, or, as you said, they have directors or others kind of enfeebling them or kowtowing them into not acting as bona fide board members. And that's just a shame.
Yeah, it is. Well,
yes.
We've come to the end of the rainbow again here. Well, wait a minute. I shouldn't say that, should I? Rainbow has a different meaning than it used to have. Good talking to you, Ron. Thanks for calling in and helping us out with this difficult subject.
Very good, sir. Instead of rainbow, maybe use the yellow brick road. How about that?
That's better, yeah. Thanks.
Have a good day, sir.
So,
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The former president.
FDA-approved vaccines can be mandated for the military. All 3 U.S. vaccines are still under emergency use